Teofimo Lopez and Jermaine Ortiz put on a less than stellar boxing exhibition against one another. But did Lopez deserve the decision? I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV. And man, that's a difficult one to watch tonight. I tell you, not a lot of action, a lot of tactical boxing, dare I say even running. And it seemed like both of these guys just couldn't, it was like, it's like the first time you sleep with somebody. It's a little bit awkward, and that's what it felt like tonight with these two guys. A little bit. They're both very good fighters, both real good fighters. But inside the ring against one another, it just felt a little bit awkward. And it wasn't even the first time they're in the ring against one another. Having interviewed both Lopez and Ortiz for ProBox TV at my gig over there in the previous weeks we've had, these guys fought each other in the 2015 National Golden Glove Finals, so they hadn't been in the ring with each other, although it had been 9 years ago, but it just didn't seem like the styles came together very well tonight. Didn't gel together at all very well. Ortiz boxed his fight, he came out southpaw and stayed southpaw the entire night, which was, I think, a surprise to a lot of people. We know that Ortiz can switch stances, but to stay in the same stance all night and to stay in the southpaw stance all night, maybe nobody expected that, including probably Teofimo Lopez. But even Teofimo Lopez, he's a guy who, was trying to come forward, was trying to make the fight in some aspects. But one thing I learned in the later part of my career is when you come forward, you got to have your guard up and you got to have your feet positioned well. Lopez is a very athletic fighter, and a lot of times he does things wrong. And when you change up the system and you're going to come forward, you have to adjust your fundamentals because you're going to the danger. You're now not trying to draw danger to you and making it pay. So you can afford to stay in awkward positions and react in awkward ways and keep your hand positioning in a little bit messed up different ways because you're suckering guys in to throw at you and counter them. When you're going forward, you're going to the danger. And that was, I think, one of the biggest problems Lopez had in coming forward tonight. He was going to the danger with his hands down, crossing his feet over, didn't really know how to cut off the ring very well. Don't get me wrong, as far as cutting off the ring, it's not as easy to cut off the ring against a southpaw. Plus, Ortiz was doing not just left and right moving around the ring, he also was changing heights at various levels. And when you got a guy who's bouncing around, all of a sudden changes heights on you last minute, you kind of get defensive and you kind of jump back for a second, And then off of that jump back, he's able to find the opening to slip around and step around again. You got to start all over. And in that way, and sometimes he's able to, create that opening off that little change of height and then jab off you or punch off you, So it wasn't Ortiz. I tell you what, Lopez got a lot of criticism tonight for not cutting off the ring, but Ortiz wasn't making it that easy to cut off the ring. Besides the southpaw stance, the change of height, change of footwork, change of speed on the footwork too. This is a difficult guy to cut off the ring against. But I think Lopez didn't do himself any favors by having his hand positioning all over the place while coming forward. Again, when you're going backwards, your hand positioning can be a little bit more wild because again, you're trying to set traps. You're trying to let guys see things maybe they think they see when they actually don't see, and then you sucker them in for a counter shot. But not when you're coming forward. Not when you're coming forward. Lopez, you can't do that when you're coming forward. And I think that's something that somebody like Devin Haney's going to be watching tonight, who's a boxer who knows how to fight on the front foot. Actually, Haney's been looking good even on the front foot of late too, but also on the back foot very well. Because Lopez, as stellar as he is, looks a little bit inept when he's forced to come forward. And he's forced to come forward because, again, you got to get back to your fundamentals when you're coming forward. When you're a come-forward fighter, you want to cut off the ring, have proper balance and footwork, not be too squared up, which Lopez also was very square as he's coming forward with his hands down, his hands all over the place. Because then when you react offensively, when you're coming forward with your hands all over the place and you're squared, you can't put punches in combination because you don't have your hands positioned in the right place. Your balance is all over the place. So therefore, now your combination punching is affected as well. You're trying to shoot pot shots. So you're trying to shoot one at a time. You're trying to load up one shot at a time. And that's pretty much what Lopez was doing. Ortiz did what he did well. It just, again, it didn't blend together as with the styles very much. I know he's going to get credit for, over moving and moving around the ring too much. I know he hired a Cuban assistant coach who I think they worked the tactical part of the fight brilliantly. I think they expected to walk Lopez into more traps by moving like that, but Lopez was so confused and befuddled himself. He didn't know how to close the gap in order to walk into the traps. He was so befuddled that he wasn't even getting close enough to walk into the traps. He was just all over the place and just walking forward. Again, hands all over the place, feet all over the place, and so he couldn't even walk into the traps even if he wanted to. I thought Ortiz did very well early on. Kind of took his foot off the gas in the late part of the fight, but I never thought Lopez really did a lot either. 9 rounds to Lopez. And can we stop can we stop praising judges? Can we stop? I mean, Joe Tessitore at the end of the fight is calling Steve Weisfeld maybe the best judge in boxing. Can we stop, dude? The guys with the most experience in boxing are the guys who are probably most on the take because this is why they get hired so much. Because you can end up on a you can't be on a promoter's list to be hired, but you can be on a promoter's list that he can try to banish you when you get listed as the hired judge. The promoter can protest you and say, I want that judge changed. So you can, as long as you don't wind up on promoters' ban list, so to speak, you can keep getting hired all the time. So the fact that a certain judge is never on a promoter's ban list and he has more experience than every other judge, that doesn't mean they're the best judge. That does mean they're possibly most on the take. Whitefeld is not a bad judge or a good judge. He's not any better than anybody else. I don't find him to be anybody better than anybody else. Tonight I thought his scorecard was horrible. I find him to be a pleasant guy, but nonetheless, the scorecard was horrible tonight, and no judge is that good or that bad. I can't think of one judge in my life that I'm thinking like, okay, that guy's been a consistently good judge. There's always comes a point in time where you're always wondering if they're on the take. Always. None of them ever get through that. Referees, you can have your favorites and your non-favorites because there's specific refereeing styles in certain referees, especially in many referees, especially many top referees. So you can have your certain referees that you can say, I like him the most, or I think that's the best ref in boxing. Can we stop saying that about judges, though? There is no best judge in boxing, bro, because at one point or another, they're all leaving you scratching your head wondering if they're on the take. All right? And tonight, 9 rounds for anybody at all, 9 rounds was a joke. All right? I don't know how you can watch Teofimo Lopez tonight, throwing one punch at a time, feet all over the place, hands all over the place, walking forward. Half the time he's walking into shots himself, and you're giving him 9 rounds. I don't understand. Honestly, I can't really... it wasn't the easiest fight to score. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you like there's a massive robbery either way. You can pick something you like and say, oh, Ortiz got. I'll tell you what. I'm not gonna call it a robbery, but if anybody deserved to win tonight, I think it was Jermaine Ortiz. He had at least a disciplined game plan, boxing the fight that he wanted to box. Lopez didn't really look like he had a plan. He didn't look like he had any adjustments. He just was coming forward, throwing shots here and there, however they came out. Never adjusted his feet, never tried to cut off the ring, never adjusted his hand positioning coming forward, like I said. I mean, there was no rhyme or reason to what Lopez was doing. Yes, he was befuddled. Yes, he was confused. He couldn't get Ortiz to stop. He couldn't get Ortiz to cooperate with him, which obviously Ortiz, that was part of the game plan. It was a different Ortiz than you'd seen before, too, because Ortiz is usually a guy who throws a lot of combinations and throws a lot of punches. So I guess he was respecting the punching power of Lopez and also was trying to throw him off. So from a tactical perspective, it wasn't exciting. It's not going to be an in-demand type of style that you're going to want to watch again. And Ortiz probably is going to get some deserved criticism himself for, this is an entertainment sport and he's got to entertain. But between the both of them, he's the only one who showed up with a rhyme or reason to what he was doing, dude. You know what I mean? I don't know if there's a robbery tonight. I can't really tell you there's a robbery tonight, but if anybody deserved to win tonight, it's actually a guy who actually had a well-built game plan together and executed it pretty well, because the other guy wasn't doing anything, man. I mean, he's taking it as it comes. And yeah, you know what? Maybe he gets the win. Like I said, it's one or the other. It's not one way or the other. It's not a robbery. But personally, for me, the way I assessed it, that's my assessment of things. And honestly, yeah, none of them are going to do themselves any favors tonight with the way this fight evolved together. But I still believe both guys are tremendous fighters. It's just stylistically against one another, it just ended up being a dud. And sometimes you get that, and they're going to probably walk into some criticism that they deserve. As far as anything else is concerned, we'll see. At least Lopez still has a WBO title, so people are going to want to fight him. Maybe this is going to make people want to fight him more. I still think Lopez is going to be much more dangerous when you come forward. So when you think of guys like Subriel Matias, I think it's still a terrific fighter, and I still think it could go either way. But I look at Haney now as a guy who could pose a lot more problems to Teofimo than I was expecting, than I was thinking at least before. Because Haney can probably box in this manner, be a little bit busier, have a more accurate jab. Speaking of accuracy, dude, can we stop with the CompuBox, guys? Can we stop with these punch stats? I know there wasn't a lot to talk about tonight with the fight because there wasn't a lot of action going on. Every second, these commentators are going back to punch stats, punch count, punch percentages. Guys, it's a guy playing Nintendo. They're not even accurate. I'd rather rely on my own eyes to see what's landing than to some guy who's pressing buttons with his the interpretation of what's landing. Especially in a fight like this where barely anything's landing. Whatever's landing's
landing partially, or it's missing barely, just barely, so you don't know if the guy even knows if it just missed barely, or if he's pressing the button anyway, because you only got a split second to press that button regardless. We stop with these punch stats already. Please, man. I feel like we're getting dumbed down by the day over here in this sport, you know? It's crazy. Anyway, that's my rant. I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV.